The fight started with something so small, I almost laughed at first. But it turned into one of the ugliest arguments I've ever had with someone I loved. It was a Saturday night, and I was curled up on the couch with a blanket, half watching Netflix while my boyfriend Dylan scrolled on his phone. Out of nowhere, he said, "Hey, is it cool if I crash at Claire's place tomorrow night?" I blinked. "Wait, Claire? As in your co-worker?" He nodded casually, like it was the most normal request in the world. "Yeah, we've got a late work project, and her apartment's closer to the office. Saves me the drive back and forth." At first, I thought he was joking. I even laughed nervously. "You're asking me if you can sleep over at another woman's house." He rolled his eyes. "Why are you making it sound weird? It's not like that. She has a spare couch. It's practical." Something twisted in my stomach. I'd met Claire once at a company party. She was sweet, funny, and gorgeous. Long blonde hair, effortless confidence, the kind of girl you notice when she walks into a room. I had nothing against her personally, but the thought of my boyfriend spending the night under the same roof as her made me feel sick. "Dylan, I'm not comfortable with that," I said firmly. His face hardened instantly. "Wow. Selfish much? It's literally for work. I'm not asking for a weekend getaway with her. Just one night on the couch." I stared at him, stunned. Selfish? That word stung. I tried to stay calm. "I'm not trying to control you, but you have to see how it looks. Why can't you just drive home? It's 20 minutes. "Because I'll be exhausted," he snapped. "Do you really care more about your insecurities than about me getting enough sleep?" The room felt suddenly smaller, the air heavier. I could feel the fight growing claws. This wasn't about sleep anymore. This was about trust, respect, and boundaries. And for the first time, I wondered if Dylan and I weren't on the same page about any of those things. I didn't shout, but my voice came out sharper than I intended. It's not insecurity to want my boyfriend to come home to me instead of staying at another woman's place. He threw his hands up. "This is exactly what I mean. You don't trust me. You think the worst of me. That's selfish, my name." Hearing him say that so certain, so dismissive of my feelings, made something inside me crack. And that was only the beginning. I didn't sleep much that night. After Dylan went home, I lay in bed replaying the conversation in my head, trying to decide if I was overreacting. Was I being clingy? Insecure? Or was I just asking for the bare minimum in a relationship? By morning, I had convinced myself I needed to talk to him calmly. No raised voices, no accusations. Just honesty. So I texted him, "Can we talk today? I don't want us to keep fighting." He replied almost instantly, "Sure. But you need to stop treating me like I've done something wrong." The pit in my stomach deepened. He didn't even want to hear me out. He had already decided I was the problem. When Dylan showed up at my apartment later, he acted like everything was normal. He kissed my cheek, grabbed a soda from a fridge, and plopped down on the couch like we hadn't just argued about something that shook me to my core. "So about last night," I began carefully. He groaned. "Seriously? We're still on this?" "Yes," I said, firmer than I expected. "Because you called me selfish for not wanting you to spend the night at Claire's. Do you realize how that sounds?" Dylan set his gun down a little too hard, the fizz spilling over the rim. "It sounds like you don't trust me. That's what it sounds like." I shook my head. "It's not about trust. It's about boundaries. There are 1,000 solutions here. You could stay late. You could meet her in the morning. You could even invite her here to work if it's that urgent. But sleeping at her place? That crosses a line." He leaned back, arms crossed, his expression cold. "You know what? Maybe the problem is that your idea of boundaries is outdated. Not every guy who sleeps on a co-worker's couch is cheating. Some of us just need rest." The dismissive way he said it, like my feelings were old-fashioned, like I was some paranoid girlfriend from a bad rom-com, hurt worse than the request itself. I wanted to yell. Instead, I whispered, "You're supposed to be my partner. Why do you care more about defending her couch than respecting me?" For the first time, he didn't have a quick comeback. He just stared at me, jaw clenched, like he was deciding whether I was worth the argument. And in that silence, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't sure anymore if I was. The silence between us stretched until it felt unbearable. Dylan finally stood up and started pacing, running his hand through his hair the way he always did when he was frustrated. "You're blowing this out of proportion," he muttered. "I don't even know why I'm explaining myself. It's not like I asked to share a bed with her. It's a couch. A piece of furniture. That's it. I stared at him, tried to keep my voice even. You don't get it. It's not about the couch. It's about the choice. You chose to make me feel replaceable instead of safe. Do you realize what that says about where I stand in your life? He threw his arms in the air. Replaceable? Really? God, you're dramatic. You always twist things into some emotional crisis. This isn't about you, it's about work. But somehow, it always becomes about your feelings. The words landed like punches. Always about my feelings. As if I was the burden in our relationship. As if caring about respect and trust made me difficult. I tried one last time to explain. I'm not asking for much, Dylan. Just come home at night. That's it. If the roles were reversed, if I asked to stay at some guy's place, you'd lose your mind. That got his attention. His face hardened, his voice sharpened. Don't even try to compare. You know it's different. Different how? I demanded. Because I'm not like that, he snapped. I wouldn't cross that line. And if you were staying with some guy, yeah, I'd be pissed. But that's because men do cross the line. Claire isn't like that. I'm not like that. Why can't you just believe me? The double standard stung. He knew it. I saw it in the way his eyes darted away from mine for a split second, like he was exposed. I sank back into the couch, suddenly exhausted. Do you even hear yourself? You're asking me to accept a rule for me that you won't follow yourself. And then you call me selfish for not letting you break it. That's not love, Dylan. That's manipulation. He froze as if I had slapped him. Then he scoffed, shaking his head. Manipulation. That's rich coming from you. You cry, you sulk, you play the victim until I give in. That's manipulation. Something inside me cracked wide open. All the little moments I had ignored, him dismissing my worries, laughing off my boundaries, calling me too sensitive whenever I stood up for myself, suddenly fit together like puzzle pieces. Maybe this wasn't about one night at Claire's. Maybe this was about the way he had always made me feel small when I asked for respect. I stood up, my voice shaking but steady enough. If me wanting my boyfriend to come home to me is selfish, then maybe I don't want to be in this relationship anymore. His mouth fell open. For once, Dylan didn't have a comeback ready. He just stared at me, like he couldn't believe I had actually said out loud. For the first time since we met, I felt the tiniest spark of power flicker back inside me. And I knew deep down that this argument wasn't just about Claire. It was about everything we had been ignoring for months. And whether I was ready to face it or not, this fight had pulled the truth into the light. Dylan's expression was unreadable. For a moment, I thought he might apologize, maybe admit he crossed a line. Instead, he laughed, but it wasn't a warm laugh. It was sharp bitter. You're really going to throw away everything we have over a stupid night on a couch? He asked, shaking his head. You love making yourself the victim. It's pathetic. The word pathetic cut through me like glass. I felt my cheeks burn, but I didn't look away. I'm not the victim here. I'm the girlfriend who set a boundary, and you decided it was negotiable. That's not how respect works. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You know what your problem is. You've been watching too many TikToks about toxic relationships. You think everything is some big red flag. Newsflash, it's not. This is real life. People compromise. I almost laughed at the irony. Compromise? Dylan, compromise means finding a solution that respects both of us. What you want is obedience. That's not compromise. He rolled his eyes. God, you sound like a therapist. I just wanted to avoid a long commute. But sure, let's make it about your fragile ego. The anger in me boiled over. Stop pretending this is about mileage. It's about the fact that you'd rather fight with me than say, okay, I'll come home. You chose this argument, not me. That shut him up for a second. His jaw worked, his eyes darted toward the floor, like he couldn't bear the weight of my words. Then, in a quieter tone, he muttered, You're impossible to please. I swallowed hard. That was the moment I realized we weren't talking about Claire anymore. We were talking about us, about how little he understood what love was supposed to look like. I thought about the early days with him. The nights we stayed up until sunrise talking about everything and nothing. The way he used to bring me coffee just the way I liked it. The softness in his voice when he said he loved me. Where had that man gone? Or had he ever really been there? My voice trembled, but I forced the words out. If protecting our relationship makes me selfish, then maybe I'd rather be selfish than be stupid. His head snapped up. Excuse me. You heard me, I said. I'm done being made to feel like I'm crazy for wanting respect. If you think this is pathetic, then maybe we're pathetic. Maybe this whole thing is a waste of time. The air between us turned heavy. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. For the first time, I saw doubt in his eyes, not about me, but about his grip on me. You don't mean that, he said finally, softer now, almost pleading. You're just angry. But I did mean it. And for once, I wasn't going to take it back. I crossed my arms and whispered, then prove me wrong. Choose me over convenience. Otherwise, maybe this conversation is the last one we'll ever have as a couple. His mouth opened like he wanted to argue again, but no words came. He just stood there caught between pride and fear, and for the first time in our relationship, I wasn't the one afraid of losing him. The silence after my words was deafening. Dylan just stood there, shifting his weight from one foot to the other, like a kid who'd been caught doing something wrong but refused to admit it. His bravado had slipped, and for the first time, I felt like he was the one cornered. Finally, he muttered, "You're being dramatic. Nobody ends a relationship over something this small." I let out a bitter laugh. Small? Dylan, you don't get it. This isn't about Claire or the couch or 20 minutes of driving. It's about how you talk to me, how you dismiss me, how you make me feel like I'm asking for too much when I'm really asking for the bare minimum. He rubbed his face with both hands, groaning like I was exhausting him. Bare minimum, bare minimum. God, do you ever hear yourself? You always make it sound like I'm failing some impossible test. No matter what I do, it's not enough. I stared at him, my chest tightening. Because you don't try. You fight me instead of hearing me. You'd rather call me selfish than admit I have a point. That's what hurts. The words hung in the air, and I could see something flicker in his expression. Maybe guilt, maybe just frustration at not winning the argument. He sat down heavily on the edge of the couch. So what do you want from me, huh? A list of rules? A contract? You tell me exactly what I can and can't do so you don't feel insecure. I clenched my fists at my sides. I want a boyfriend who doesn't need a list to know that sleeping at another woman's place isn't okay. I want someone who cares about how I feel without mocking me for it. I want respect, Dylan. For a second, he didn't say anything. Then he chuckled humorlessly. Respect. You act like I'm cheating on you or something. Newsflash, I'm not. But keep treating me like a criminal, and maybe I'll stop bothering to prove otherwise. That line landed like a stone in my stomach. It wasn't just dismissive, it was a threat. My breath caught in my throat. Did you just say what I think you said? He shrugged, his eyes cold now. I'm saying you push and push, and then you wonder why guys snap. You're walking a fine line. The room went quiet again, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was sharp, electric, dangerous. For the first time, I was afraid of not what he might do, but of what he was already showing me. That his love had conditions, that his respect had limits, that his patience was only for himself. I took a slow breath. You just proved my point. You'd rather threaten me than admit you're wrong. That's who you are. He stood up suddenly, towering over me. You know what? I can't do this. I can't sit here and be treated like a monster because you're paranoid. I'm leaving. My chest tightened, but I forced my voice to stay steady. Then go. His eyes narrowed, like he expected me to beg him to stay. But I didn't. I just stood there, heart racing, waiting to see what he'd do. And when he finally grabbed his jacket and stormed out, slamming the door behind him, I didn't cry. Not right away. Instead, I sat down on the couch, staring at the door and whispered to myself, maybe this is the beginning of the end. For the first time, I wasn't sure if I wanted him to come back. When the door slammed shut, the echo lingered in my apartment longer than it should have. I sat motionless, staring at the space he had just occupied, waiting for the adrenaline to leave my body. It didn't. My hands trembled, and my chest felt like someone had tied a rope around it. Normally, after a fight, I'd be the one texting first. Are you okay? Can we talk? That was always my role. The peacemaker, the fixer, the one who held us together. But this time I didn't move. I didn't reach for my phone. I thought about what he'd said, that I was selfish, dramatic, paranoid. That he couldn't even rule out the possibility of snapping one day. That maybe I was pushing him toward cheating. The words replayed like a cruel soundtrack, and the more I heard them, the more I realized they weren't the words of someone who loved me. They were the words of someone who wanted control. Hours passed. I kept expecting the vibration of my phone, the little flash of his name on the screen. But nothing came. The silence stretched into the night, and when I finally crawled into bed, it felt cavernous without him. Yet I also noticed something else. For once, I wasn't suffocating under the guilt of being the bad girlfriend. The next morning, my phone buzzed. A single message: "We need to talk. Come over." No apology. No acknowledgement of the things he had said. Just a demand. I stared at the text for a long time. Part of me wanted to delete it, to cut ties clean, right then and there. But another part, the part that had loved him for 2 years, the part that still remembered his laugh, and the way his hand fit perfectly around mine, hesitated. I typed back, "Not today. I need space." Almost immediately, the dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, his reply came. Space from what? From me caring about my job? From me trying to make my life easier? You're unbelievable. My stomach churned. I locked my phone and tossed it aside. I tried to distract myself by cleaning, by cooking, by scrolling aimlessly through social media. But every little thing reminded me of him. The coffee mug he always used, the hoodie he'd left on the back of my chair, the photo of us at the beach still on my fridge. By evening, my phone rang. His name lit up the screen. I didn't answer. It rang again. And again. Finally, he left a voicemail. "Look, I don't know what's gotten into you, but you're acting crazy. I didn't do anything wrong. I asked you a simple question, and you turned it into World War III. If you can't handle being with a guy who has female friends, maybe you're not ready for a real relationship. Call me when you stop being childish." I listened to it twice. Each word landed heavier than the last. Childish. Crazy. Not ready. I sat on the edge of my bed, clutching my phone, and realized something that terrified me. If I stayed with Dylan, this was going to be my life. Always questioning myself, always apologizing for feelings that were perfectly valid, always being made to believe that I was the problem. And for the first time, I asked myself out loud, do I even want this anymore? I didn't answer his voicemail. For the first time in our relationship, I let his words hang unanswered in the air. It was strangely liberating. The next day, I woke up with swollen eyes from lack of sleep, but my mind was clearer than it had been in weeks. I made myself coffee, sat by the window, and thought about the girl I used to be before Dylan. I remembered how independent I felt, how much I trusted my own instincts. Somewhere along the way, I had traded that confidence for his approval. By mid-morning, my phone buzzed again. This time, a series of texts. "Are you seriously ignoring me? So you're punishing me for nothing? I can't believe this. You're acting insane. If you don't answer, I'll just come over." That last one made my stomach tighten. The idea of him showing up uninvited felt invasive, almost threatening. I typed back quickly, "Don't come over. I need space. Please respect that." No reply. The day stretched on, and I kept checking my phone, half hoping for an apology, half dreading another attack. By evening, I decided to get out of the apartment before I lost my mind. I grabbed my keys and went for a drive with no destination in mind. The streets blurred by as I blasted music loud enough to drown out my thoughts. At a red light, I finally called my best friend Lila. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm and steady like always. "What's wrong?" she asked immediately. I broke. The words tumbled out in a rush. How Dylan wanted to stay at Claire's, how he called me selfish, how he turned it all back on me. When I finished, there was a long pause. Then Lila said, "You know this isn't normal, right? The way he talks to you, the way he makes you doubt yourself, it's not love. It's control." Hearing it from someone else hit different. Tears slid down my cheeks as I gripped the steering wheel. But what if I'm overreacting? What if I really am too sensitive? "Don't do that," she said firmly. "You're not crazy. You're not selfish. You're setting a boundary, and he's punishing you for it. That's manipulation, plain and simple." Her words settled deep inside me. I had known it in my gut, but hearing her say it out loud gave me strength. I ended up at Lila's apartment, where she wrapped me in a hug and poured me a glass of wine. For the first time in days, I felt safe. That night, as I lay on her couch, I replayed Dylan's face in my mind. The anger, the arrogance, the way he'd scoffed at me. And then I thought about the quiet peace I felt being away from him. It was like my body was telling me what my heart hadn't wanted to admit yet. Maybe I didn't love him anymore. The next morning, sunlight spilled across Lila's living room, but I barely moved. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, lighting up with Dylan's name. Again. I let it ring until it went silent, then watched as the screen filled with a flood of new texts. We need to talk in person. You can't just run away from this. I'm not the bad guy here. Claire even said you're overreacting. She laughed when I told her what happened. That last one hit me like a slap. He had gone to Claire about our fight? He'd told her enough that she felt comfortable laughing at my feelings? I tossed the phone aside, my hands shaking. Lila came out of her bedroom, hair messy, still in pajamas, and sat next to me. Still him? She asked softly. I nodded. He told Claire. He made me sound ridiculous to her. Her eyebrows shot up. So not only did he dismiss your feelings, he broadcast them to someone else and let her mock you? Honey, that's not just disrespectful, that's humiliation. Tears burned in my eyes, but I forced them back. I don't know why it hurts more that he told her than it does that he called me selfish. Because it proves he doesn't have your back, Lila said simply. A partner is supposed to protect you, not put you on display for other people's amusement. Her words sank in. Deep down, I knew she was right. Dylan wasn't protecting me. He wasn't even standing with me. He was standing with Claire. The day dragged on. I tried to distract myself. Lila and I went out for brunch, walked around the park, even did some window shopping, but every time my phone buzzed, my chest clenched. By the time we got back, there were 6 missed calls and new voicemail. With shaking fingers, I pressed play. Look, I don't know what game you're playing, but I'm done chasing you. If you're going to act like a child, maybe I don't want this anymore either. Call me when you're ready to be an adult. The casual cruelty in his voice sent a shiver down my spine. For the first time, instead of sadness, I felt anger rising in me. Hot, steady, righteous. I turned to Lila. He thinks I'm going to crawl back. He thinks if he waits long enough, I'll apologize. She smirked faintly. Then prove him wrong. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my decision forming like a storm on the horizon. I wasn't going to let Dylan define me as selfish, insecure, or childish anymore. If he wanted space to prove how little respect he had for me, then I was going to give him all the space in the world. But not before I said what I needed to say. The next morning, I packed up the few things of his he'd left at my place, the hoodie, his charger, a half-empty bottle of cologne, and stuffed them into a bag. My hands shook, but my mind was clear. It was time to end this on my terms. Driving to Dylan's place felt surreal, like I was heading toward the final chapter of a book I never meant to write. The bag with his things sat on the passenger seat, heavier than it should have been. It wasn't just fabric and plastic. It was the weight of everything I'd carried for months. Doubt, guilt, fear. When I pulled up outside his apartment, I sat in the car for a long time, gripping the steering wheel. My hands were damp, my chest tight. I wasn't sure if I was ready for what I was about to do. But then I remembered the voicemail, the word childish, the sound of Claire's laugh echoing in my mind. My resolve hardened. I rang the doorbell. He opened the door almost immediately, like he'd been waiting. His face was tight, eyes sharp. Finally, he said, crossing his arms, "You've been acting insane." I didn't step inside. I simply handed him the bag. "These are your things. We're done." His arms dropped slightly, his confidence faltering. "What? You're breaking up with me? Over what? Over Claire's couch?" I shook my head. "No. Over everything. Over you calling me selfish for setting a boundary. Over you humiliating me to another woman. Over you making me feel small every time I try to speak up. This isn't about a couch, Dylan. This is about respect. And you don't have any for me." For a moment, his face softened, like he might finally apologize. But then the arrogance slipped back into place. "You're making a huge mistake. No guy is going to put up with your drama. You'll come running back when you realize that." I took a deep breath, steadying my voice. Maybe no guy will. But I'd rather be alone than be with someone who thinks my feelings are a joke. The silence that followed was heavy. He stared at me, jaw clenched, like he was trying to find the right insult to throw. But nothing came. Finally he muttered, "You're unbelievable," and snatched the bag from my hands. I turned and walked away, my legs trembling but steady enough to carry me down the stairs and back to my car. My heart pounded in my chest, but instead of dread, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, relief. As I drove away, the city lights blurred past me, and for the first time in weeks, I rolled down the window and let the night air wash over me. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Maybe heartbreak, maybe loneliness, maybe second-guessing. But right now, in this moment, I felt free. And I realized something important. Dylan hadn't broken me. He'd just shown me what I deserved. And it was so much more than him. The first few days after walking away from Dylan felt strange, like I had stepped out of fog but wasn't used to breathing fresh air yet. My phone stayed eerily quiet. No calls, no texts, no attempts at an apology. At first, that silence hurt more than his words. But then I realized the silence was peace. I spent more time at Lila's, and she kept reminding me of who I was before Dylan, confident, ambitious, funny. Slowly, I started to recognize that girl again. I went back to painting, something I hadn't touched since Dylan once said it was a waste of time. I reconnected with a couple friends I'd pulled away from because Dylan didn't like them. Piece by piece, I was rebuilding the parts of me he had chipped away. One evening, about 2 weeks later, I got a text from an unknown number. It was short, just one line, "Hope you're happy without me." For a second, my chest tightened, but then I laughed, a small, genuine laugh. Because yes, I was. Not perfectly, not without pain, but happier than I'd been with him in months. I didn't reply. Instead, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. And I thought about the word that had started it all, selfish. He'd hurled it at me like an insult, but I realized now that being selfish wasn't always bad. Sometimes it meant protecting your peace. Sometimes it meant choosing yourself over someone who drained you. Sometimes it meant walking away, even when your heart wanted to stay. I wasn't selfish for not letting my boyfriend sleep at another woman's house. I was self-respecting, and that's something Dylan had never understood. That night, as the city lights flickered on below, I made myself a promise. Never again would I let anyone convince me that my boundaries were weaknesses. Never again would I shrink myself just to keep the peace. And maybe, just maybe, one day I'd meet someone who didn't see my strength as selfishness, but as exactly what it was, strength. Until then, I was enough on my own. And that realization, more than anything Dylan could ever say, set me free.